We, as a surveillance team, were here watching every move they were making without them knowing that we were here.
So in the summer of 2020, the constabulary were provided with some information from the National Crime Agency, the NCA, which gave us a packet of communication that had come from encrypted mobile telecommunication devices. And an initial inspection of that could show that a number of people were using them to move large quantities of Class A controlled drugs into Gloucestershire. And the constabulary were faced with piecing together the parts of the puzzle to work out who was using those devices. The initial operation found that 2 users were based between Stroud and Cirencester from the postcodes that were being passed, and we had to then work out the individuals behind each of the messages so we could further our investigation. The constabulary decided to launch a proactive covert investigation to work out who these people were, and that led to the identification of Charles Bryant and Mr. Blackwell Smith. It was clear that the people that used these devices really believed the encryption that was being sold to them. When dealing in drugs, they were sending images of the drugs they wanted to buy and sell, discussing the prices and how deliveries would be made. And it was the decision then to deploy surveillance against these two that identified an address in Merritt's Mill in Stroud, where they seemed to be basing their criminal activities from.
We've come down to Giddinap Lane, which is in Nailsworth. Now, Giddinap Lane was one of their preferred locations when they met with the courier, John Jose. John Jose was charged and convicted of supplying drugs to Charles Bryant and also Harry Blackwell Smith, and they chose this location because, as you can see, it's completely secluded and there are very few people that are moving through the area, and they felt really comfortable here, so comfortable that they were actually able to make sort of transactions of kilo amounts of cocaine and cannabis during this offending period. Now, John Jose would travel down in his van and on occasion would travel up Giddinap Lane, would use this location here to turn the van around and then wait for Charles Bryant to come up and meet him. Now, on these occasions, Charles Bryant would come up with a bag, generally a rucksack, and he would get into John Jose's van, and then after a few minutes leave that van, and then the surveillance officers were able to see that actually he didn't have that bag anymore. And as they continued to watch, they saw that he would open the back door of the van and then remove a large bag, and on occasion it was something similar to a large washing bag or picnic bag. He would then get back into the front of the van and they would drive back down Giddinap Lane to the more busier area on the A46. And then Charles Bryant would exit the van and then walk off to his home address in Merritt's Mill. And every movement was being recorded and retained so that we could gather evidence, so that when we did come to arrest him, we would be able to have a successful prosecution against him. Now, there are many different lanes through this area, and as I said, it's a valley. And one of the things we were able to locate was a stash location where Charles Bryant was burying drugs and money under the ground, and he used a large protein pot which he buried under the earth and then covered over with logs. And when it came to the arrest, we were able to go and recover a fairly substantial amount of cocaine from those pots that he had no clue that we knew about. And again, it was such a really good piece of work, a very methodical approach by the surveillance team to be able to gather that evidence at that time.
As part of the ongoing inquiry, the drugs that were seized and the cash that was also recovered was passed to our colleagues in the forensic department of the constabulary. They were able to work on the notes that were seized from the courier and find the fingerprints or the finger marks on those notes that actually matched up with the 2 suspects in Gloucestershire, proving evidentially that that money had been handed over by our subjects to the courier. Once Mr. Bryant had been arrested, a number of further warrants were then executed, including at the home address of Harry Blackwell Smith, his co-defendant, who was also one of the users of the encrypted mobile telephones. The 3 men were taken into the custody of the Gloucester Constabulary, where they were interviewed and later charged and remanded into custody. Within Gloucestershire, I hope this shows that if you choose to deal drugs, you run the very real risk of going to prison. These individuals took nearly every available precaution to try and frustrate law enforcement, but ultimately they were unsuccessful and will face a lengthy time in prison as a result.